Hello. It's almost 5 years since Holyrood rejected proposals for assisted suicide by the late independent MSP Margot MacDonald. Today, MSP started looking at fresh proposals to give terminally ill people the right in law to be helped to end their lives. Jane Chilton has this report.
Gordon Ross has been living with Parkinson's for 13 years. He wants the power to end his own life if he chooses to do so.
You should have the choice as to how you die. Now, when you're fit and able, you do have the choice. And you can kill yourself at any time if you want to. It might be wrong, it might be a bit mad, but you can do it. As you become more and more disabled and more weakened by whatever ailment you've got, you become less able to do it yourself.
The assisted suicide bill was introduced by the late Margot MacDonald.
We're trying to find an honourable, fair and equitable solution to a problem.
It failed in 2010, but it's been amended. It seeks to remove criminal liability from anyone who helps assist someone with a terminal illness to end their lives. Today, a panel of legal experts and police told the Health Committee the legislation needs greater clarity.
We need to be also clear at what point is there a demarcation where assistance is being given and that actually crosses over to being complicit in homicide.
The debate stirs powerful emotions on both sides of the argument. And while committing suicide is currently not illegal in Scotland, helping someone to do so is. It's a huge grey area.
If you're talking about assisted suicide, of course it's difficult, especially today, the 21st century in Scotland, politics, nobody really wants to deal with that because it's such a hot potato. And so trying to come up with a bill that everybody's going to be reasonably happy with, very difficult.
So what exactly does the bill propose? Well, only those terminally ill or with progressive conditions which make life intolerable can seek assisted suicide. They must inform a doctor of their wishes, and their request must be backed by a second professional opinion. It's then followed by a 14-day cooling-off period. And finally, a facilitator or friend at the end, who has no relationship with the patient, to collect the prescription and agree the process of assisted suicide. A poll last year suggested 69% of Scots support assisted suicide, but the British Medical Association, representing medics throughout the UK, is opposed. However, anecdotally, it is already unofficially happening, so why no prosecutions?
There haven't been many cases, and that kind of raises the question as to, well, it probably is happening, but the prosecutions aren't taking place. I would suggest it's to do with the police and the prosecution authorities deciding, whether they should prosecute in these circumstances. But of course, I don't have evidence of that.
To keep the pressure on, Gordon Ross is seeking a separate judicial review at the Court of Session in March, calling for changes for the police and the fiscals in helping deal with those who admit to assisting patients take their own lives.
Well, I'm now joined by the Scottish Green Party leader Patrick Harvie, who took on the assisted suicide bill following the death of Margot MacDonald, and by the Observer columnist Kevin McKenna. Gentlemen, good evening to both of you. First of all, to Patrick Harvie, why are you so keen in supporting this? We saw in the film there you suggest 69% of people want this to become law, but is this not a falling figure?
No, there's been consistent polling evidence, I think, showing a trend of public opinion in favour of some kind of change in the law to clarify the situation for those who wish to end their life in these kind of circumstances. The commitment that I gave to Margot before she died was that I would take on that bill. She appointed me as second member in charge, and that I would do my best to present that bill to Parliament. I'm very open to discussing amendments to the detail, but I do feel strongly that we should be advocating for the basic principle. Our lives belong to us. It's down to the individual, and I think this is the continuation of a long-term trend away from a kind of top-down authoritarian approach to medical treatment as well as other life choices, where a doctor would decide, would withhold information from you. over the decades, we've been moving toward a situation which is more about empowering and informing individuals to make their own choices and supporting people on their own terms. And I see this as a natural continuation of that long-term trend.
Right, so Kevin McKenna, if it's down to the individual, why can't people have a right to choose, as we saw from Gordon in the film?
I think the debate isn't so much about those individuals who are in this very bad situation, but actually more about those whom it may come to affect in the future if this passes into law. There's a lot of vulnerable people who are profoundly physically or mentally handicapped, and depending on their circumstances, depending on how much love and compassion they're surrounded by, they become depressed. It depends what sort of culture is around them. Will they feel under pressure to feel that their quality of life isn't sufficiently good? And also, again, are there sufficient is it possible to build in sufficient safeguards where there is an acceptable level? Who makes the decision between what is deemed to be sufficiently progressively ill and who isn't? I wouldn't like to be in that position, and I don't think we should be legislating for it.
Well, I'll put that point to Patrick Harvie. Patrick, what kind of safeguards are there in the bill then? As Kevin's raising that point there about the people who may not be affected just now, but it may affect them in the future.
I'm very aware of the argument and the concern that some particular groups of people may feel that they would be more vulnerable to having pressure put on them. I take that concern very seriously. I met with some of the people who were campaigning against the bill today. I met last week and discussed that. I think in particular disabled people, it should be recognised, are living in a society that very often doesn't meet their needs in terms of supporting them to live in an empowered and an informed way. We should recognise that. At the same time, I think the evidence and experience of other jurisdictions which do have a form of assisted suicide is that very many people feel empowered, feel less vulnerable actually, and less open to pressure to make one decision or another if they know that at the end of the day the choice is theirs, that their decisions, their right to make a choice about their own life will be respected. And actually what we see, for example, in Oregon is that a very large proportion, perhaps something like a third of people who end up acquiring a prescription for a lethal dose of medication to end their lives end up not using it. They know that the choice is there, they have the option, and for many people they say that gives them the strength to feel that they can face the circumstances that they're living through.
Kevin, that was the point Gordon was making. He was just wanting the option there, whether or not he was ever going to use that option.
I mean, let's get things in perspective. Nobody would wish this on their worst enemy. Only those who are suffering in this way can actually know their own minds. And sometimes people like me who do have deep concerns and can risk appearing to be third party and authoritarian, but nevertheless, I feel that in this age, the early years of the 21st century, when medical advances are being made every week, that we should be putting all our time and resources and effort into increasing what is a very good system of palliative care that exists in Scotland already, and making sure that we construct an area which is underpinned by love, compassion for the patient, both within his family and if the family isn't there, within our nursing staff.
And Patrick Harvie, this was the point about palliative care was being brought up by medics at Holyrood today. I mean, what does it mean for palliative care if this goes through?
Absolutely, I strongly agree with that, and I think everybody I've spoken to who supports this bill also wants to see continued improvement in palliative care. It can do a great deal for very many people. It can't do everything for everyone who's facing a degenerative or a terminal condition which gives rise to suffering they find intolerable. But the evidence says that around the country, around the world, in places like Oregon, Belgium, the Netherlands, we've seen an increase in investment in palliative care The option of assisted suicide in no way would undermine or detract from that. In fact, it simply reinforces the point that choice and autonomy and people's right to make decisions about their own life, that's what we're talking about here. And when is that more important than when we're facing a terribly distressing situation like the end of someone's life through a terminal condition?
Patrick Harvie, Kevin McKenna, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both very much for joining me. Thank you.